Hi everyone, and thanks for tuning in today to this podcast, which is called The Provenance of Flametree Wines, Chardonnay from Vine to Wine. My name is Leah Clearwater. I'm the brand and sales manager at Flametree Wines, and I'd like to introduce you to Ron Fraser, who's the owner of Atticus Vineyard, this gorgeous property that we're here today, and also the Chapman Grove brand. So this is probably the first time you'll see Ron just sitting in a camp chair in a vineyard.
It's the very first time,
Yeah.
and probably the last, I would think.
He's normally probably running around on a tractor or...
Walking up and down the rows, doing all that sort of thing,
Yeah.
but not in a chair, no.
So yes, this is an unusual scenario. We're sitting here in the Chardonnay block that supplies the fruit for the SRS Chardonnay for Flametree Wines, which is an award-winning Chardonnay. It just won top gold at the Perth Royal Show, 98 points from Hugh and Hook in the Real Review. Ray Jordan gave it 97 points. James Suckling gave it 96 points. Mike Benny gave it 95 points. So an absolute stunner of a Chardonnay, and the fruit comes from here. So
right off this block here.
Right off this block that we're sitting in, and the beautiful, you can see just the beautiful flush of fresh green shoots of Chardonnay as we go into the spring period. So just a little bit about Flametree Wines before we get stuck into the interview with Ron. It was established in 2007 by the Towner family, and they really just wanted to offer a range of stunning Margaret River classic wines alongside some unique styles. And right from the outset, they achieved significant acclaim with the 2007 Jimmy Watson Trophy for their Flametree Cab Sav, which is a very prestigious trophy in Australia. I think it's one of the top.
The most prestigious.
The most prestigious. And to receive that kind of recognition in your first vintage is pretty stunning.
Yeah.
Flametree is not an old school Margaret River brand, nor is it one of the brash new regional players that we see. But I think it's a brand that knew what it wanted to be right from the get-go, and it's travelled along a course which has made it a really well-trusted and really well-loved brand in the Margaret River region. So what we're doing here today is basically broaching a topic which a lot of consumers might not be aware of. Most people, when they visit a cellar door or purchase a wine from a bottle shop or enjoy a wine off a list in a restaurant, have the assumption that the wine that they're drinking has been made from fruit that's estate grown. I mean, most people think, okay, if I'm drinking a Flametree wine, Flametree must have their own vineyard, and it's located somewhere in the Margaret River region, and they harvest the fruit and make the wine. But that's actually not the case, and that's what we really want to focus on and talk about today, is that there's a lot of brands and producers who actually have chosen not to have their own vineyards. They've chosen to instead be really selective and source fruit from across the region and what they consider to be the best parcels of fruit for the wine styles that they want to create. So it's a bit of a challenging one when you're marketing your brand, because people love the romance of the vineyard and the fact that the fruit comes from there and that's what they're enjoying in the glass. But I suppose that's what I want to broach. Flametree buys Chardonnay from Ron's vineyard, and Ron has his own brand.
And the interesting comparison there is we've got the vineyard, but we don't have the winery. We actually get our wine made at another contract winemaking facility just down the road from here. So you've got the winery and the cellar door, we've got the vineyard, and we actually get our wines. And a lot of people will say, where's your winery? You know, say, the vineyards, no, where's your winery? No, we don't have a winery, and they just can't understand that. They struggle with the concept of, how can you have wine but you don't have a winery? Yeah. So there are a lot of those variables in the industry that people haven't scratched the surface.
There's a lot of different models. I mean, you've got to find the best fit. The cost of owning and operating a vineyard's pretty significant. So being able to purchase fruit and not have all of those overheads is good. But same goes for having a winery.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've chosen to have a premium vineyard, and you have got a premium vineyard, but it's a lot easier for you to get the fruit. Use another facility, made into wine somewhere else. Yeah. So I'd love to learn a bit more about yourself and this vineyard and the fruit that does go into the SRS Flametree Chardonnay. So how long have you been in the wine industry, and what got you into it?
I've been in the wine industry in different forms for probably the last 30, 35 years, whether it's been in retail vineyards growing fruit and selling all the fruit to local wineries, or then adding production to that, as in our own brands and that, which we have out in the market at the moment. So yeah, probably 30, 35 years. What got me into it? Love of wine, I think.
Yeah.
Love of wine, love of Margaret River. I'm originally from the East Coast. My retail stores were in the East Coast, and we used to sell a lot of Margaret River wine when we could get it. Back then, there wasn't a lot of it around. But I always just loved the styles and the quality and consistency of quality that came out of Margaret River. So I got very passionate about it, and always felt that if I was ever going to grow fruit anywhere, it would be in the Margaret River region for those sorts of reasons. Just simply because it is quite a consistent region, and in agriculture that's pretty important. Horticulture,
absolutely.
agriculture, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And the styles that come out of the Margaret River region are styles that I really enjoy drinking, and they're more of that sort of more elegant style, rather than big aggressive wines. So.
Yeah. So what made you choose this location? What was your rationale behind that?
Well, I'd love to say that we had all that information when we first bought the land, but we didn't. And,
No.
and the region in itself was only, back in '87 when we bought the land, the region was only 20 years old.
Yeah.
So it was very, very young for a wine region. But part of what we loved about this land is, obviously, if you have a look around, it was a paddock when we bought it because we developed it up from bare land. But we just loved the location of this. We loved the topography of it. The sort of rolling hill slopes, and that's where we fell in love in the first place. And then, of course, we went further to go, well, okay, what varieties work better here?
Yeah.
Now, this is the southern part of Margaret River, and it is quite cooler than the northern part of Margaret River. But if you had the knowledge you have now and make your decisions back then, they probably would have been based on some different outcomes. We're learning all that as we go along, and I think, by the time I fall off the edge, I'll still be learning. And that is this industry. If you talk to people in general that have been on the land for a long time, then I don't know anybody who stands back and says, I've known it all ever since day one. No. It's a real learning curve, and you've got to continue to adjust and also try and not chase trends, because you can't chase trends in this industry. It takes too long. By the time you plant a trend and it grows and it produces, the trend's probably gone somewhere else. So it's better to try and stick with what you think you can get out of your property, the best you can get out of your property, and work on that, and hopefully it works for you. Fortunately, Chardonnay has come back into vogue very much the last sort of 3 to 5 years down in Margaret River. Yeah,
well, you look back at we were both very much around when the GFC hit and people started pulling Chardonnay vines out of the ground.
Yeah, exactly.
And you look at that now and people can't get their hands on enough Chardonnay. No. There's a demand for it. No. So when you do follow those trends, you can often get yourself unstuck.
Yes, you can
pulling out the wrong varieties and planting.
If you get it right, it's more good luck than good management, I think anyway.
Yeah. So could you tell us a little bit about the particular sort of fruit characteristics that come off this block that you sell the fruit to Flametree for their SRS Wallcliff Chardonnay? What's the difference of this block from the rest of the vineyard, and what kind of even the vine characteristics or the fruit characteristics of this Chardonnay?
I think this block, we've got three other blocks of Chardonnay, and this block is the oldest block on the property. But what we've found over the years is the consistency in this block. It seems to have really, the whole thing sings here. The vines love the soil, the altitude, the protection from the winds, a lot of that through the line of trees over to the rear there, over there. And it just is a block that astounds us every year.
Yeah.
It's got lovely vigour, not excessive vigour, but enough there, healthy vigour. And it seems to be able to produce high quality Chardonnay year in, year out. It's a Ginging clone, which is the most sought after clone in Margaret River. Some people call it the hen and chicken, as you know, and the hen and chicken represents the different sizes of the berries on the bunch. They're smaller and larger, the hen being the larger, and the chicken being the large. Hen and chicken, would they get that right?
The hen is the big and the chicken is the little.
Yeah, sorry. And they
depends on how big the hen is, I suppose. But.
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah. They produce quite different flavours, intensity of flavours. The smaller the berry, as you would know, you just get that intensity and the acidity in this block I don't think we've ever had to add acid to any of the wines that we've made from this block ever had to use any excess acid. It's always got that beautiful, crisp, linear acidity. And in there's that minerality character, which everybody is sort of searching for, and it's pretty hard to find. So, again, a bit blessed. I don't know how much research you would have to do initially to be able to establish the outcomes of that when you first plant. And I think it's probably nigh on impossible. But this particular block is just, it's the easiest block on the property to manage. The yields, we try and keep them at around about sort of 7 to 8 tonne to the hectare, and it manages that very well. And these rows are probably 200 odd metres long, over a height of probably over 57, 60 feet higher than at the top than it is at the bottom. But the consistency right across the block, and anybody who's done anything in viticulture knows that if you get consistency over that sort of area, this is about a 2.6 hectare block, is just phenomenal. It just every year we look at it and we go, we're really blessed to have this block, and it's it's very much sought after fruit from this block. There's a lot of recognition. I've been told, I don't repeat this very often, but I have been told by independent sources that this is, if it's not the best block in Margaret River for Chardonnay, it's close to, and that's an assessment from outsiders, not me. So we're blessed. We're blessed with this block.
Well, I know that speaking on behalf of Cliff Royal, the chief winemaker at Flametree, and Julian Scott, who's an excellent winemaker, they love the fruit from this block, and that's really what provides the unique characteristics that we see in the SRS Chardonnay, that driving acidity, complexity, and then obviously combined with the winemaking techniques that they use, you get this incredible wine that's so balanced and yet has a slightly savoury kind of character to it. But it's got that beautiful, bright, fresh fruit, and I think you get more aromatics in the south of Margaret River.
You do, absolutely.
You retain that longer season, more milder weather conditions. It's there in the glass before you take a sip, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it.
We find that these wines usually need about 3 years in the bottle before they actually start to show some of that, because they're quite tight when they're first bottled.
A little bit more sort of linear in style. So how do you work? I mean, people are probably interested in this dynamic where you have a winery and a brand that's established and people know of it and they love and enjoy their wines and they're buying fruit. How do you work with the winemaker who's purchasing the fruit? Is there any difficulties there? Is it pretty easy? How do you set parameters so that, you as the supplier and he as the buyer, it all works beautifully like a lovely marriage?
There's never any problems dealing with winemakers. It's a wonderful, easy process. No. Look, winemakers have got a job to do, and we've got a job to do.
That's right.
And somewhere you've got to find middle ground on that, because not everything is under your control in being the seasons, the weather, all sorts of different things. And that's all we can do, try and find that middle ground that works for both parties. If it's too balanced one way or the other, then it's not going to work long term. We understand we have to do everything we can can on this block or on our vineyard to produce the best possible fruit we can every year. And we can do all those things, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work. Now, the winemaker's either going to be able to use the fruit or not able to use the fruit. And that's, in fairness, if that's a decision that's made, considering both parties, then there's nothing else you can do about it. So, but as long as you both start off with the right intentions, I think working with winemakers is mostly pretty easy. It's when the thing gets out of balance one way or the other, and growers and or winemakers can be on either side of that. They can be the cause of it. So,
well, I think you guys have got a pretty good relationship, which is great. And I think I sort of believe that the same with food, the Italian ethos that food made with love tastes better. I think wine made with love tastes better. And if you've got a positive relationship between the grower and the winery, then all the better. But you actually sort of mentioned a point that I think is interesting. There's so much romance, or perceived romance of the wine industry. People love going out and looking in the vineyard. You see people jumping out of their cars all over Margaret River and getting happy snaps or wedding photos, and they love behind the scenes and going and sniffing the barrels out the back of the winery. And but what a lot of people probably don't understand is the challenges that you face. The winery is one thing, but we're sitting here in a vineyard. What keeps you up at night sometimes during the growing season when you're not only producing fruit for your own brand, but for brands prestigious brands like Flametree. What is it that is not so romantic about working in the wine industry?
There's a lot of things there that take away the romance pretty quickly. But the one thing that we can't control is the weather.
Mother Nature.
And Mother Nature. It has its way of turning things on its head very, very quickly when you all of a sudden got all of this rosy projection of the next few weeks, and then a storm comes in that wasn't even on the radar. That's a thing that can turn the whole thing on its head very quickly and cost you a lot of money and a lot of fruit that won't go to a winery that then therefore can't make their wine, and it costs them a lot of money. So it's the one thing. We can sort of manage bird pressure, we can manage diseases most of the times, but weather, we can't do anything about it. We just got to live with it and try and keep our fingers crossed that it is reasonably kind to us most seasons. And that's, as I said earlier, one of the things that I loved about Margaret River is the consistency of vintages year in, year out. And I think if you go and check vintage scores, like Halliday and that, you'll see that Margaret River is probably one of the, if not the most consistent region in Australia from my understanding of it. So it does, but it still keeps you awake at night. I check it every morning, I check it every afternoon, I check it at night time. I look at the 28-day forecast, I look at the 7-day forecast, I look at few different sites, but none of it makes any difference. If the weather decides I'm going to rain tonight or tomorrow or whatever, you can't stop it. And it is the thing that we all live and breathe by.
Yeah. So back to the working with the purchasing winery, in this case Flametree Wines. Does Cliff come out during the season and you have a look at the fruit together and
Cliff
make the decision optimal time to harvest?
Absolutely. Cliff makes the decision on when he wants to harvest in conjunction with our contracting crew, and also he'll be looking at the weather as well. And Cliff is very good. He spends a lot of time on the vineyard during the season to work with us to make sure that when we get to the pointy end of the vintage that we're going to get the maximum benefit from the fruit and all the work we've put in. But we do nearing when we're getting ready to pick, about 3 weeks or so, we're virtually doing sampling at least twice a week, and probably in the last week or so prior to harvest, we would be sampling every couple of days. And the decision can be made. You've got to book a lot of logistics in for harvesting. Winery, harvest machines, all sorts of things. This is hand-picked here on this block, so individually we've got to organise hand pickers, which is a lot more difficult this year because of COVID. But we spend a lot of time together, and a lot of planning goes into trying to pick it at the optimum time. And sometimes that can be one day. If you miss a day and it's a really hot day, it can change the fruit so quickly overnight. It's so critical.
I've seen that.
And it can be heartbreaking. But sometimes that day, the winery either can't take the fruit, or you can't get the pickers to come in and do it, or something happens. And it's such a critical time of the year. And that last 4 to 6 weeks of vintage, everybody's sort of on their toes trying to make sure.
It's such a juggling act. I mean, it's. As you know, I've got a background in viticulture, and I was working for a lot of clients trying to, negotiate all those logistics. And there's often a window of opportunity when the fruit is at its absolute peak. And the stars have got to align, the transport's got to align, the labour's got to align, the winery's got to be ready for the fruit. There's so many things you've got to line up and get right.
It's massive. It's massive.
It's really good for people to know these things, because I think it offers a lot more understanding of the behind the scenes. And when you're sitting there and enjoying a glass of wine, you can actually more fully appreciate what goes into that. The blood, sweat, tears, worry, organisation. And it's a whole year process.
It is.
I mean, even in winter when the vines are dormant, there's still so much to be done in the winery, in the vineyard, to keep things ticking along, getting ready for the next vintage that's coming along. But that's enough about the difficulties of running a vineyard. What is it that puts a smile on your face? I mean, I imagine if I owned a property like this, I'd be smiling a lot. I love this property. It's gorgeous. But what is it that you actually really enjoy that makes you happy growing grapes in this region?
Oh, look, I think seeing the rewards of such as the success that Flametree have had, and other wineries that we supply, the comments regarding the quality of fruit from winemakers. I'm not a qualified winemaker, I'm more a pretend viticulturalist. So
I think you're a viticulturalist.
I'm self-taught in that regard. But it's that's the reward, seeing the quality of fruit that you can actually achieve from the vineyard, the hard work that you put in. That's probably the thing that puts the biggest smile on my face.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes drinking it. But, yeah.
You mentioned earlier that there's often trends that we feel swayed by. Should we plant some alternate varieties? And I think that there's a place in the market for those varieties.
I agree.
But there is, the industry is cyclical. Wine writers, reviews, influence what consumers want to drink. Chardonnay has gone through a lot of different stylistic changes in Margaret River over the years.
Yeah.
What do you think it is about Chardonnay, and even perhaps Cabernet, which are the two hero varieties of this region? What do you think it is about Chardonnay as a variety that makes it stand the test of time? Consumers are always going to come back to it in some form.
It's a pretty difficult question to answer quickly.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all right, because it really is an interesting question, in that Chardonnay many, many years ago was more just seen as a commercial drink.
Yeah.
In the market, and it was, cheaper price, and people go, oh, Chardonnay, you'll have a glass of that, that's fine. I think what's happened is that the consumer has become more sophisticated. The Australian consumer has become more sophisticated. And what we've seen over the last probably 3 to 4 years, is the growth and the awareness of Chardonnay in the market.
Yeah.
And that's also attributable to the winemakers, their approach to it all, that they're now they're more focusing on making more serious Chardonnays than $10 Chardonnays.
Not the quaffers that we used to focus on.
But the reality of Chardonnay, it's been around for hundreds of years.
That's right.
It's the queen, the king of whites, whatever you want to call it. And Australia, trying to build its reputation as a Chardonnay producer in the early days, was very difficult, because the French had it pretty much tied up. But there's a couple of regions in Australia, and obviously Margaret River is one of them. Yarra Valley, now we're seeing those sorts of Chardonnays come out, and also Tasmania, bit out of the Mornington, but it's those cooler climate areas that we're seeing that they produce the best quality Chardonnays, whereas our regions were mostly Hunter Valley, Barossa, McLaren Vale, which are all hot regions, and you put Chardonnay in there and it's not going to work.
No.
It just doesn't work.
No.
And you go there now, you probably wouldn't find a Chardonnay vine.
Yeah, they've pulled them all out.
Whereas down here, and for the last 5 or 6 or 7 years, Margaret River Chardonnay has been going up in price, in quality, and recognition. And it's just a fruit that produces magnificent whites that you can drink early, or you can sell them. Don't ever let anybody tell you can't sell a good Chardonnay. And
I totally agree with you.
I'm currently drinking the 2006 that we made off this property.
Yeah.
And I'm not biased, because a lot of other people are drinking it as well, or a few people. It's just beautiful. It develops in that beautiful. That's the winemaker, the art of the winemaking, but you've got to have the great fruit to start with for them to finish up making great wine. So I just see Chardonnay over the next, I think Margaret River Chardonnay will probably get ahead of the Cabernet in
Really?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So yeah, especially southern Margaret River Chardonnay.
Yeah.
Because it's just being seen as ideal. A bit of climate warming in there might be influencing that a little bit. But and that's not to say they don't make great Chardonnays up in the northern part of Margaret River.
Just
but
different.
It's the southern Margaret River climate and everything where people are going, that's where the best Chardonnay is coming out of Margaret River, or the ones they want to work with. And I just see it as it'll either be level with Cabernet, or it'll certainly hold its own, or it might even get in front of it after a little while, because it's a region that produces fantastic Chardonnays.
Yeah. Well, I am unashamedly a Chardonnay girl. I love it. If I'm going to have a glass of white, it's pretty much nearly always a Chardonnay.
Yeah.
You're not a Chardonnay girl, though.
No, I'm not a Chardonnay girl, but all the other bits are right. Yeah.
And the thing I love about it is it's a chameleon. You know, you can produce so many different styles from Chardonnay. And that's one of the things that attracted me to work with Flametree Wines, is they have a number of different ranges within their portfolio.
Yeah.
The Embers range, the Flametree range, and the sub-regional series, which is the one we're talking about today.
Yeah.
And it's so wonderful to see 3 different Chardonnays, all beautiful Chardonnays, but stylistically very unique from one another.
Yeah.
So, and we're just very grateful to be able to purchase the fruit from this vineyard, from the Atticus Vineyard. Please don't sell it to anyone else. Cliff asked me. No.
No, I do hear that Julian doesn't like us doing that.
No. We'd love to keep working with you, and we hope that you feel that you can take some of the credit for the great acclaim that particularly the 2019 SRS, all those amazing reviews, gold medal, and that's just early days. It's only just been released. So hats off to you, because I really believe as a viticulturist that great wine is made in the vineyard.
Yeah.
It's finished off and obviously finessed in the winery, but you can't make an amazing wine like that without amazing fruit.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. And but you can't make amazing wine out of amazing fruit unless your winemaker is doing all the right things as well. So it is a team effort. That's what I like about this game. It is a team effort that you can work together and create a product that comes up to those standards you're talking about.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much for your time today,
My
Ron.
pleasure. Thank you.
It's actually really nice to be just sitting here in the vineyard,
now all we need is the wine.
I forgot to bring the wine. I've got him a bottle to have later on with his dinner.
I'm not sharing it. Yeah.